So I'm Marta Cordell, and we're going to go from the emotional and spiritual into a little bit more of the physical. So today I'm here to talk to you about taking back your health, right? And so I'm from the Thermography Center of Dallas. We've actually been there for about 18 years. We were the first thermography center in the U.S. There were other practitioners that were doing it before, but it was mainly just in the office as a sideline, and that was our main focus. And we've done over 20,000 thermograms, and all of our specialists are particularly trained in how to read the thermogram, so we can really help there. So what is thermography, right? Well, it stems from how well do you really know your health, right? And so what it is a functional diagnostic tool for the whole body. So it looks at all of the organs, it looks at all of the systems. It's the only test that measures the lymphatic system. So we're looking at a comprehensive view of the body. Next slide. So this is what the report looks like, and it looks like it's a little big today, but yeah, so there are very many sections of the report. It's a very comprehensive report, and it's radiation-free, non-invasive, and you get the report immediately, so you don't have to wait. Next slide. So it is FDA accepted as an adjunct diagnostic tool, so it's made to be used in conjunction with other testing as well. So you can get a really complete picture between this and other testing. Next slide. It's also used and accepted by many of the leading physicians here and also in Europe. It's a technology that's been around for about 40 years, and they actually use it in the hospitals in Europe. So we're a little bit behind the curve on that, but we're working on that. So yeah, we're working with a lot of the physicians in town, and then also in other parts of the country. So next slide. So do you know the root of your health issues? That's really what thermography is looking at. We're looking at the root causes. Next slide. So there really are only a few root causes, and the rest of it is symptomatic, right? So viral, yeast, and bacterial infections, subclinical infections in the body, subclinical infections in the teeth, toxicity, chemical toxicity, heavy metal toxicity, things like that, and then lymphatic issues. Those are truly the root of all health issues. The rest of it is symptomatic, and so you see all of these other things that come from that: high blood pressure, neoplasm cancer, infertility, hyperthyroid, things like that. All of these things are actually just symptomatic. So if we can get to those root causes and treat those root causes, then not only does it alleviate the degeneration of the body, but also all of the symptoms as well. Next slide. So what most people are familiar with in thermography is camera thermography, which basically is a big camera that takes an infrared image of the body. And it's good technology, but there's a lot left open to interpretation with that. So you see colors, maybe it's a little more green, maybe it's a little more yellow. It's up to the physician to really interpret that. With regulation point thermography, what we do is we're actually taking the temperature at the skin. So we're actually getting specific temperature readings, so we don't have to guess. And then through algorithms, it generates this 6 or 7 page report that really goes in depth into telling us what's going on in there. Next slide. So the procedure itself is in 3 parts. So you start with, we take 119 different points of the head and torso, and then we have you remove everything but your underwear and stand in a cool, private room for 10 minutes. So what we're doing is submitting the body to a cooling challenge. And it's not a major cooling challenge. It stays between 68 and 72 degrees, but it's just enough to show the body a reaction. So depending on how each of those points responds to that cooling challenge, we can tell what's going on with the organs and the tissues. So after the cooling period, we take all of those points again, and we have a comparison. So next slide. These are all the points that we measure, and there are actually 26 points just on the breast tissue, right? So it's a very in-depth look at how healthy the breast tissue is. Next slide. So this is a synopsis of the report here. So you see there are several pages. It gives you several different sections. Next slide. The first section is the summary page. So the summary page breaks it down by each of the different body sections, and it tells you what the findings are in each section. So we have general identifier patterns, which is things that are affecting you systemically. And then we have each different section. We have the head, we have the neck, we have the chest, and so on. So, so it's a very comprehensive synopsis of the rest of the report. Next slide. On the second page, we have a pictorial representation. So we can very quickly see where there are hot spots, where there's inflammation. We can see what's going on with the dental. We can see where there are cold spots, things that may be under functioning. Next slide. And then the next page is a full-page dental report. So the teeth are very important to the health of the overall body. Each of our teeth actually sits on one of our acupuncture meridians. So anytime there's a problem with the tooth or the gum surrounding it, it can potentially affect any and everything on that acupuncture meridian. So it tells us the meridian that it sits on, all the different parts that it could be affecting, and also to what extent different things are affecting the rest of the body. Next slide. It gives us a nice little chart as well that tells us things like which vertebrae it's connected with. You know, so it's a very in-depth look at what's going on with the dental. Next slide. So half of American adults suffer from gum disease, and that's important because it affects the rest of our health. Next slide. Next. Yeah, so it can cause stroke, respiratory disease, heart disease, diabetes, ulcers, osteoporosis. All of these things can come from dental issues. 93% of the cases of breast cancer have at least one root canal. So it's very tied to the dental health. Next slide. So how well do you really know your breast health? How many different diagnostic tools do you have in your arsenal to look at breast health? Next slide. Periodontal disease is linked to breast cancer. Next slide. There we go. 93% of the women with breast disease have root canals. So dental health is crucially important to breast health, but there are many other contributing factors as well. Next slide. So this is the breast analysis page. It shows us the point readings before the cooling period. It shows us the point readings after the cooling period. It also has a complete grid at the bottom that shows us all of the contributing factors to the breast health. So not only do we know how healthy the breasts are, but also what do we need to work on in order to effect a change. So things like lymphatic issues, things like if you have issues with the tonsils, particular teeth that are connected to the breast meridian. So it gives us all of those contributing factors so that we know where to start so that you can improve the breast health. It also tells us to what extent things are contributing. Next slide. So it also gives us a pictorial representation so that we can see where there are hot spots, where there are cold spots, where there are blocked spots that might be toxicity. Next slide. So this is kind of an up close of all of the contributing factors. So we can see some of the organs are connected. The liver being warm and blocked, for example, is an organ connection. Next slide. And this is the extent to which things are contributing. So the endocrine influence, the lymphatic load, physiological degeneration, which is the acidity in the body. So all of these things play a role in the breast health, so we can get a really in-depth picture of what's going on there. Next slide. So it also gives us a graphical representation of all the different things that the thermography tests for. So it shows us all the places where we have issues, but then also all of the other things that we've tested where the body is functioning optimally. So you know where the body's strong and where it needs some support. Next slide. And then on the final page, it gives us a comprehensive graph of all of the point readings. So this is where having a really good specialist in thermography can be very helpful, because there are a lot of things that we can see in the actual point readings that won't necessarily show up on that first page, because the algorithms aren't perfect. But if we have the actual point readings, then we can really get specific on what's going on in there. Next slide, please. So the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is crucially important to our health. It's part of our endocrine system. It's part of our detoxification pathways. It's also part of our immune system. So if your lymphatic system's not working well, it impacts everything else going on in the body. So looking at the lymphatic system is really a crucial piece that's missing for a lot of people. So that's one of the things that the Thermography report does very well. Next slide. So, so this is what I talked about. So part of the way that we get rid of toxins, part of our endocrine system, part of our lymphatic, our immune system. Next slide. And these are all the places where we get a good picture of the lymphatic system. So it's not just looking at the lymphatic points, but all of the other organs and tissues that are involved in the lymphatic system. So the tonsils, the thymus, the axillary lymph, and the appendix. Many people don't realize that for a long time we thought the appendix did nothing, right? But what we found is that that's where all of our good bacteria is stored. So when the body's bacteria starts to get off, you know, when we get that mycosis in the gut, this is how the body rebalances itself. So looking at all of these things gives us a really good picture of how that lymphatic system is working. Next slide. It also gives us a very important cardiovascular assessment. And most specifically, it'll tell us if there's a myocardial danger, which means that you are in danger of a myocardial event, a heart attack, a stroke, right? So it can very quickly look at that. And very often we're seeing these things 7 to 10 years before they come up on other testing, before they even become symptomatic. So it's a very good early warning system for things like that. Next slide. It evaluates all of our different organs, all of our different systems. It's a very good comprehensive test that you very likely will want to do every year as part of your yearly checkup. Next slide. It also reveals subclinical infections. So that's one of our root causes, subclinical infections. So viral infections, bacterial infections. And subclinical infections are different from what you would normally consider a clinical infection. When you have a clinical infection, you run fever, you feel ill, you want to stay in bed, right? You have body chills and fatigue. With a subclinical infection, they very often manifest in different ways. So they'll manifest in ways like poor digestion or skin issues, you know, rashes, things like that, that you can't necessarily specifically say this is what's causing that. Very often that's subclinical infections that are causing those things. So by eliminating those subclinical infections, we can then eliminate those symptoms as well. Next slide. These are all the organs that we assess. So all of the organs, with the exception of the spleen, but we can also tell the health of the spleen by some other of the different markers. Next slide. So is this something that you guys feel like would help you assess your health? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it can be a really big help. And so with this, in conjunction with the heavy metal testing that we do, also gives us a very comprehensive picture of your toxicity and how well your body's eliminating that. Next slide. So, so it is a completely different way of looking at health. So our paradigm is less diagnosing diseases and more figuring out where the balances are in your body. How is the body functioning as a whole and as individual parts, right? So rather than saying you have this disease or you have that disease, we're saying, okay, what parts of the body are out of balance and need support? Because if we can bring the body back into balance, then we eliminate all of those things that we call diseases. Next slide. So we make it super easy. You come in, you have your test done, and then one of our specialists sits down and goes over it with you immediately afterwards. If your physician is interested, then we'll sit down and go over it with your physician. We're happy to do that because we want to make sure that you have the best information possibly available. Next slide, please. And if you schedule today at the show, we actually have a really good special for you guys. It's $150 off of your thermogram. Now, they're normally $524, but we have the $150 off today. We also work with the United Breast Cancer Foundation, who gives grants for breast testing. So you just go on their website, and on our website we have all the instructions. But you just go on their website and you make your application, and they don't turn anyone away. So if you need help with your diagnostics, then they're there to help as well. Any questions? Yes.